لا إله إلا الله محمد رسول الله.
Something about not feeling shy about benefit. When I was in Damascus, daily there would be it's one of the beautiful traditions of Damascus at the Grand Umayyad Mosque. Daily between Maghrib and Isha, they used every day except Fridays, so 6 days a week, they would read the primary reference book for fatwa in the Hanafi school, Shaykh Adib. And the head jurist of the Hanafis, Shaykh al-Razzaq al-Halabi, he was the Shaykh of this lesson. And the people attending would include some of the very distinguished scholars. My own teacher, Shaykh Muhammad Jum'ah, was in his 4th complete reading of this reference work. And he was the reader of the lesson. So he'd been attending the class daily. It was his 17th year. Right, daily. And others, Shaykh Fawaz al-Namir and others as well. And 2 things stand out about this idea of not being shy of benefit, that one day the class was taking place. So Shaykh al-Razzaq al-Halabi is sitting. And we have in the West what's called the chair of this department, the chair of that actually comes from the Islamic tradition. That in the great mosques they'd have the kursiyu tadris, the chair, the teacher's chair. Yeah. And so Shaykh Abdul-Razzaq al-Halabi had the teacher's chair and he'd be sitting on it. And Shaykh Abdul-Razzaq was a very short man. He basically kind of disappeared in the chair because it was like a whole like an armored vehicle kind of thing. It was a big chair, and he was quite elderly, so he's bent over. You could barely see him from on top of the chair. May Allah have mercy on him. And it was a dars that had very strict standards because you're not supposed to talk in it. The scholars would plan in advance if they would ask a question. The Mufti of the Shafi'is, who was his son-in-law, would attend, sometimes just sit on a chair, like just a regular chair to his right, but he'd be relaxing because he'd been giving fatwa all day and teaching. Once in a while he'd make a comment and Shaykh Abdul-Razzaq al-Halabi would look at it. And this is the Mufti of the Shafi'is of Damascus, which is not a joke. We'd give him this glare. Once in a while he'd sort of put his hand and once he actually told, because he was just what is this ruling? Because it was very strange for a Shafi'i, some ruling. I started speaking. He looked at it and said, "Skut." He told him, be quiet. And we all wanted to disappear. This is the Mufti of the Shafi'is. Right? How could you say that then? But it was this lesson is serious. Then one day, there's a Qibla door at the Grand Umayyad Mosque. And Shaykh Adib Kallas walked in. Now, Shaykh Adib Kallas and Shaykh Abdul-Razzaq al-Halabi were lifetime friends. They had studied together and they'd been friends for almost 60 years at that time. This is the late 90s. So Shaykh Adib came in. And this was unusual. So immediately, but Shaykh Abdul-Razzaq al-Halabi gave permission. One of the mashayikh went and got a chair, put it next to Shaykh Abdul-Razzaq al-Halabi, whose lesson it was, and Shaykh Adib said no. He went and sat right at the back, in his late 70s at that time. And they insisted that he sit, and he sat right at the back, cross-legged. And he was an elderly man, it's not easy to sit on the ground for him. And they insisted. And he just said, I was one of the youngest people there, I was sitting at the back anyways. So he says, the student of knowledge, طالب العلم لابد أن يكسر الركبتين. The student of knowledge must crack their knees. And if anyone would be considered at the seniority of Shaykh Abdul-Razzaq al-Halabi, it was Shaykh Adib Kallas. Actually, by age, Shaykh Adib Kallas was 4 years older than Shaykh Abdul-Razzaq. But he deferred to him as he was more senior to him in fiqh. So that was his, and he sat all class at the back. Twice actually Shaykh Abdul-Razzaq asked him, what do you have to say, Ya Shaykh Adib? And he refused to say a word. Why? Because this was Shaykh al-Razzaq's class, and he was listening like fully attentively, right? As a student, rahmatullahi alayhi. This is the sort of the standard of concern and humility they had, but then also this spirit of taking religion seriously. Two of the scholars who attended that class, both had been attending for more than 15 years, daily. They were invited for a wedding on a Saturday night outside Damascus in the evening. That would have entailed that they would miss the class. So they were planning, because on in the far corner at the front was Shaykh al-Razzaq's office. So outside, like little kids asking for permission to do something quite questionable, to stay out late or something. They planned out who will say what to go ask Shaykh al-Razzaq for permission to miss one day of the class. I was just listening in because I was young. I thought this was so cool, right? Like I said, my thing was, you're going to miss the class, just miss. What is he going to do, kill you? But they're like, so I was trying to listen in because I was 23, 24, 23, quite excited about the whole thing. So they grabbed my hand. Said, "Tal man." Like, I have nothing to do with this. They come with us. So we went in, and like little kids, these are two distinguished scholars, senior teachers at Ma'had al-Fath. Said, they're like mumbled, like, Sayyidi, Shaykhna, and there were some political sensitivities because, between peers, sometimes there's some misunderstanding. They just wanted to ask permission to miss the class. Shaykh al-Razzaq al-Halabi, who had a big desk. He was short, but again, could barely see him from the desk. He just looked up, he had these thin glasses, he looked up. He looked at them like totally not amused by the request. I said, "Ma fi majal." And then he started looking at a book. He said, "That's not possible. Okay? That this is knowledge. This is guidance." So they, that Saturday, they were there, and not a murmur about the wedding and so on. Right? This is how our religion has been preserved through such serious concern. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us of that concern. Shaykh Adib Kallas, rahimahullah ta'ala, one day he lived, despite being such a distinguished scholar, he lived in the third basement of an apartment building right on top of Jabal Qasiyun. Why? It's being in the basement as cheap as it gets. And there's many people who'd go and read different texts after Fajr. One day I went, and the only person there was the daughter of his Shaykh Abul Yusr Abidin, who used to be the Grand Mufti of the lands of Sham, and the last scholar appointed Grand Mufti of the lands of Sham, Mufti Diyar al-Shamiyya. Decades ago, he had advised his children to remain connected with Shaykh Adib Kallas. So his daughter, who was probably into her 50s, 60s at that time, I guess, she was sitting reading, and Shaykh Adib Kallas's wife was sitting next to her. So I went and I was like, where's everybody else? So they finished, I went in, and they left the room, I went in, and there's no one else there. And that's really strange, because usually there'd be 5, 6, 7, 10 people, each would read a little bit and go. There's no one there. So we read extra long. Nobody's there. Like, that's so strange. I went up the stairs, and the mistake was mine. Right at the entrance of his apartment building, there was an obituary note that the night before, after Isha, Shaykh Adib's brother had died. And the janazah prayer was after Salat al-Asr, the next day. At Fajr time, Shaykh Adib was still ready and available and actually teaching. Most of the people coming in saw the sign. I'm not good at those kinds of things, so I didn't see it, but they're still classy. Actually, we read a lot extra. Then the janazah, I went with a friend of mine, we attended the janazah. And it was very strange, because this is Shaykh Adib Kallas' brother's janazah, and I was thinking, what's going on? None of the scholars who taught at Ma'had al-Fath were there. And these are, most of them are pretty much all the teachers at Ma'had al-Fath are all students of Shaykh Adib's, with the exception of Shaykh al-Razzaq al-Halabi, who's his friend. And then Shaykh al-Razzaq al-Halabi is not there. I'm thinking like, what's going on? Those days, of course, there's no smartphones. At that time, there's not even cell phones in Damascus. It's like, you can't ask anybody, what's going on? Janazah, the funeral prayer happened at the Badra'iyah, behind the Umawi. Like, what's going on? And none of the scholars of Ma'had al-Fath, nor Shaykh al-Razzaq al-Halabi, who was just down the road at the Umawi, attended. After I finished, and I sort of hung around trying to see like what's going on, didn't figure it, walked to the Umawi, and I felt like a celebrity, because all these mashayikh ganged up on me, said, tell us about the janazah. I knew a number of those. ليش ما حضرتوا? Why didn't you attend? Because the funeral happened afterwards, thronged around, meted and greeted. And I made it well into, Shaykh al-Razzaq al-Halabi had a class after Asr. And the class wasn't immediately after Asr, because the mashayikh many of them would lead prayer in different masajid in old Damascus, and they would come. So it'd be a good 20, 25 minutes after Asr. But Shaykh Adib personally called the scholar, the Ma'had al-Fath, and gave firm instructions, and he had the seniority, that anyone who has a class before or after, do not miss your class and do not delay your class, because knowledge is more important. And he personally contacted not only Shaykh al-Razzaq, but also everyone who attended that class of Shaykh al-Razzaq, said, listen, and there's no texting at that time, you have to actually make actual phone calls. And this is his own brother's funeral, that please do not attend this funeral. I know you have a class, attend the class. And they had to listen. And this is the veneration of knowledge. This is the veneration of knowledge. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us appreciate what this guidance is, because it has come to us preserved through the efforts of people who sacrificed, who took this knowledge very seriously, of our own parents, even within our own families. Sometimes we look at our parents, we notice they didn't do this, they didn't do this, they didn't do this. The fact that Islam, for those of us who are from Muslim families, Islam is preserved for hundreds of centuries in many of our families. That is through effort and sacrifice and commitment and concern. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us to take that seriously. Wa sallallahu ala sayyidina wa nabina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Walhamdulillahi rabbil alameen.